All right, have a seat. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to be getting together again. This is also a celebration for me and Zac. It's our first year anniversary of being part of the C4R team. So lots of reasons. Oh, great. How is Philly treating you well so far, everyone? Yeah, good. Everyone's energized and, well fed. Good. Excellent. Okay, so only one thing before I pass it on to Shai, who's going to do a presentation for us. I looked up the meaning of the word conference, and is basically the root is people getting together to do things and get work done. So I hope that is the spirit, that this is something that we're all working on together. Every single progress, success, evolution of this process is thanks to the work of everyone together. So with that, I'll pass it on to Shai. I think it's good. Use that chair. Oh.
Okay. So I just click anywhere, right? Okay, good. And what do we do about Zac and then Thomas back there?
And maybe just very briefly, why it's so wonderful to have Shai tell us about this while we're waiting. Shai has been like the soul behind like pushing NIH towards, or one of the souls pushing NIH towards taking rigor more seriously. And that he's been making this his mission for a long period of time. We certainly wouldn't be here.
Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here. What can we turn off the volume here? I'm hearing myself. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah. What I would like to do this morning is very briefly take you through the vision that we had at NIMDS for an educational platform, which is starting to materialize thanks to all of you. So in 2013, I wrote a piece for myself, really, and in this piece, I wrote the following. I guess I have to do that. Okay. In a secluded society named Wonderland, advances in science and medicine, I can't see this, is too small, and medicine far exceed those of Western civilization. This rapid progress does not result from superior intellect of the people of Wonderland, but rather from a distinct set of ideals. And one of the ideals I discussed was education. And I wrote, education and training appear to be central to the success of Wonderland science. The thought that throughout their training, graduate students and postdoctoral fellows are expected to partake on an annual basis in courses on experimental design, critical reading, and statistical analysis. At the time, I used the term experimental design for what we really mean by principles of rigorous research. And when I realized that this is mainly interpreted as courses in statistics, we backed away from that. I went on to say that in addition, annual ethics training required by trainees and early stage and seasoned investigators provides a refresher on the ethical consequence of a poor experimental design. So why did I include education in this lament that I wrote for myself? Well, at the time, there were numerous papers that came out, just a small fraction of which are shown here, that suggested that there are issues with the quality of the rigor and transparency of studies generated by the academic community. And I think this was very well summarized by John Ioannidis and his colleagues, who wrote, little evidence exists about research training of laboratory scientists. The way that many laboratory studies are reported suggests that scientists are unaware that their methodological approach is without rigor. Now, at the time, it was kind of difficult to figure out whether something was rigorous or done carefully or not, because if there's lack of transparency, you don't even know if things were done or not done, okay? But fortunately, in 2013, Nature Publishing Group and other publishers added a checklist to their process of accepting papers for publication. And in this checklist, they required them to report on various elements that are related to risk of bias and quality of research. And if they didn't do it, then they have to explain why they didn't do it. So I want to show you just a couple of excerpts of that. So this is from Nature Neuroscience. And the first one is the sample size per group was estimated according to standard publications. At least 3 animals per condition or genotype were analyzed. That's encouraging, right? Well, at least they could put error bars, right? I mean, they had n equals 3. Okay. All rats were acquired at the same age and weight and single house, so there were no variables upon which to randomize for electrophysiological experiments. Okay, no concept of confounding variables. Right. Blinding was not relevant since equal experimental parameters were consistently applied for each sample during data acquisition and data analysis. No subjective measures were used. Okay. No consequence, well, no conscious understanding of unconscious biases and et cetera. So this shows that there's probably is a problem in the training that people are receiving, and at least in our little world, we verified this. Devin and I conducted a survey of all the training programs that were funded by NINDS in 2018. And we asked them a simple question. We said, do you provide a formal course in the principles of rigorous research? And if you do, please send us, what's the problem? What's in our way?
It doesn't interrupt you.
Oh, you can't see. Okay. So training is scarce. Okay? So we asked them, do you have a formal course in the principles of rigorous research? And if you do, please send us the syllabi of such courses. If we were very generous, we could determine from all the survey that only 5 of the 42 training programs had a course on the principles of rigorous research. Okay. What this suggests is that much of the training has to come down to the apprentice model of training. And judging from the papers that are being, published, it seems that that's not working very well. Okay. But to be fair, one has to, kind of think, okay, why so few formal courses in the principle of rigorous research being taught? Well, so here's one possible explanation. Research and the training of graduate students are valued highly by the faculty. Teaching, by contrast, is second class. Few university faculty members believe that time devoted to teaching will receive either recognition or reward. It is more usual and probably a more realistic view that time taken from teaching is time stolen from research and that the road to academic heaven is paved with publications. This is beautifully written, right? And probably written about, a week or 2 ago, right? No, you're wrong. This was written in 1961, okay? That I find, totally shocking, okay? So we've been in the situation for a long time, but a lot has changed since 1961. After all, now we have Professor Google. And we can ask Professor Google questions, and maybe we don't need formal courses. So I did a search last week, asked Professor Google about, blinding and randomization. And if you see the number of hits shown here, good luck trying to make any sense of that. Okay. So we said, what can we do to perhaps increase the use of formal training? Okay, to create. Okay, so we argued as follows: to build a program from scratch requires motivation, know-how, resources, and time, all of which are in short supply. Right? which means that there's a large energy barrier for creating such a course. However, if there were a free educational resource that was comprehensive, modular, adaptable, upgradable, all these lovely things, this would greatly reduce the energy barrier. And perhaps we would now get formal training across many institutions in this country and across the world. Okay, so this led us to this idea that we'll have some kind of program that's going to be completely freely available to everyone, and it can be used at the bench, in the classroom, and during mentoring. Okay? And we came up with this scheme of how this might work. We said, first of all, the most important thing, if we generated something, when I say we, I'm talking about the government. If we generated something and tried to shove it down the throat of investigators, we'd get nowhere, okay? And furthermore, who are we to know exactly what is needed? We need experts to do this. So we argued that this has to be a community-led initiative. And therefore, we envisioned kind of two entities. There will be subject matter experts from the community who will create materials about their expertise, and they will then move on to a coordinating center that responsibility will be to create the platform that will house all these materials, to produce the materials, to make them, really user-friendly and so on, and to make sure that everything is harmonized. And this center will also be responsible for evaluation and dissemination, kind of play a serious role in making sure that this actually disseminates. And importantly, we included these two arrows because there's no way for this to work unless there's, back and forth on a regular basis in good faith to try to, move things forward. Okay. And I have here, what I wrote is unit developers. Okay, we know what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the meters here. And so we have to define what we mean by unit, okay? And this is what we included in our effort. An education unit addresses a single fundamental principles of rigorous research. I don't know why it shows everything. Why isn't it? Oh, I actually didn't realize it's not doing, okay, never mind. And we define here principles of rigorous biomedical research are cross-cutting concepts, processes, and practices that promote a rigorous, transparent, and robust scientific experiments, okay? The emphasis here is cross-cutting, okay? It cannot address a single element of, single section of the scientific enterprise. And that's why we wrote, this was supposed to come in one by one, but anyway. So we say useful, it has to be useful for a broad range of researchers. Okay, it can't be just for statisticians or just for clinicians or just for graduate students. Okay, it's got to be useful for different learning environments. And, I listed here, in person, lab meeting, classrooms, and bench. The lab meeting version was creatively added by center during the first year of this award, which shows why it's so important to actually have this community-led initiative. And importantly, what is a unit? Okay, at its maximal breadth and depth material, an education unit should provide the equivalent of 1 week of instructional material. Okay, in other words, the lab meeting version can only be a part of what the entire unit really is. Okay. So that was the concept. In addition, we envisioned that there has to be a steering committee made up of representatives from each of the meters and of course center and as well as NIH, and will help kind of really make sure that we are on the right track and help move things forward as best as possible. In addition, we have what we're doing here today, which I'm so excited about. These are the annual meetings that will help us, again, solidify our collaborations and efforts moving forward. And since this is a community-led initiative, we envisioned that champions from the community that are not part of this initiative will provide, input and feedback directly to the meters and center, as well as by participation. Something is completely wrong here. It's in the transition somehow, things got messed up. Yeah. So there's also an arrow showing that, champions could participate here, and this would, at the annual meeting, and that could be very valuable for this initiative. And last but not least, you see here the external advisory committee that provides kind of the 30,000-foot view on this whole initiative, and it's incredibly important, so that we don't, kind of get stuck in our own way of thinking. Now, because this is a community-driven initiative, but we did have this vision that I just told you about. We decided to make this a cooperative agreement, and I think the majority of you, if not all of you, have never had a cooperative agreement, never been involved in it, and this is a complex kind of system where there's an official designation by the government, and that is Devon in our case here. She's hiding in the corner. And she basically is the official representative of the government. She can essentially approve the funding, approve milestones, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay? But in addition, there's another role in the government, and that's the role that I play. And this is how it's defined on the NINDS website. The NINDS project scientist can be considered as part of the investigator team and can be involved in activities such as designing research protocols and interpreting results, as well as overall oversight and management of the project. So I have the privilege of kind of just discussing the science with you and saying, how about this, how about that, but also making sure that the vision that we had is not being lost somehow along the way. Okay. And Mariah, sure, raise your hand, Mariah, she benefits from both worlds because she doesn't have an official role here. So she straddles both kind of activities. Anyway, you can see from this diagram that this is a very complex initiative. And inevitably, there are going to be bumps in the road. And there's, going to be issues that need to be ironed out. And we have to be creative, and we have to maintain our high engagement in everything that we're doing here, okay? And I'm highly optimistic that the road to rigor is on its way, and by the end, we're going to have a great product, and it'll bring us closer to Wonderland. Thank you.
Wonderful. It's going to be great talking after Shai. Shai talked about like the very big picture, and I wanted to briefly emphasize that. Like science produces insights, and it's driven by a culture. And unfortunately, there is a set of incentives operating on the scientist. Hence, 1960, the road is paved with basically nonsensical papers. And so the incentives always pull people into a certain direction. And everything changes in our culture. And like I just asked on Twitter, like, how long do you want to meet professors when they visit you? And people said 30 minutes. Now, 30 minutes is not enough time to criticize science. Now, like, it's basically another shortcut. Now, like, not only am I not reading your papers, now I'm no longer even meeting you long enough that I understand what you're doing. So it's a real problem. And in a way, it's like super stupid. Like scientists do science because they care about understanding the world. They take a 50% pay cut at least to be doing that. And then they basically just do like simple papers so that like they maximize like their career success. It makes no sense because even a maximally successful professor is still making much less than they could be making in industry, and they're here because they're idealistic about it. So we're the Renaissance hotel, the rebirth hotel, and at some level, science, since it got started as something, went through these stages with things like decay, and then people are like, hey, we're on the wrong path, let's do it better. And I hope that we are at this place where we transition into let's do it better. And not only do we now have here the Rigor initiative from the NIH side, but if we look on Twitter, like now every day, this is something that people talk about. The big news today for people who are not on Twitter is in machine learning, people still do this way of cheating of basically, it's too expensive to get enough subjects. So you make like pretend subjects by taking every measurement and pretending that it's one that it's one subject. So same problems. And in any case, I think we're like at that level where like as a community in science, we're realizing that we're on the wrong path, and teaching materials are absolutely essential to make that happen. So now let me go through the slides that my team so wonderfully prepared for us. Welcome, everyone. You are part of the movement to make science better, and I'm so excited that you're here. Hooray! So what I want to do, like we are building, because NIH is doing that with us, a team that is meant to produce all these wonderful materials. So it's time to introduce the Sender team. I also want to briefly, for people who haven't seen it, this is the new Rigorous Raven, much more beautiful and much more serious, I've been told. Seriousness is very important, and I should probably be wearing only black next time I talk here. So here's our team. We now have like 4 subgroups. They're independent, they're led. Each of them has clear leadership. Thomas is running operations. Like Thomas is like my boss in lots of ways. Hao is reading the curriculum team and basically making the materials and build a wonderful team for that. Then we have Dave, who's leading the production team. And then we have Caro and Zac, who are jointly the communications team, and thankfully kind of organize themselves. So we have the leadership in place now, and like we now have a very well-defined leadership plan, which was essential as we like reach a group size that like absolutely I couldn't manage anymore. Let's talk about the communications. We have Caro. Caro, can you stand up? Caro and Zac, who lead the community team. What's community team? They bring out get out the word. They test things with us. They like lead the public discussions. And for a rebirth, you need like that discussion in all possible channels, and they're 100% on it. So let's talk to the next channel. This is the curriculum team that Hao largely built. No, like we're all new. No, like much of the team, probably the majority, like is there for a year or less. April. We have April. There's April. And we have Annie. Karen. And Kevin. Okay, so why is this team so important for all the meters? These are kind of the folks that you will sit down, or that you're already sitting down with to talk through the units, and they walk tightly with you. Call them. Like this is a collaborative agreement legally between NIH and us, but in practice, it's a collaboration between all the meters, the whole center team, and NIH. And so these are like our point people in lots of ways. And then here we have the production team, Prathima. Prathima. And we have Jack. Where's Jack? Jack. Those are the folks that actually built the things that ultimately become the digital artifacts. Oh, and Dave, yes, of course. Oh, I didn't make the leadership team get up. Hao, I'm sorry, can I get up? I am well aware that everyone knows Thomas, but Thomas, right on your like. Okay, in any case, that's the team. Now it's time for the presentations from the team leads. And it's just wonderful from my perspective that we now have like this leadership structure in place that will allow us to be much more responsive to all the things we need to do. Okay. Oh, yes. Let's see if I can do that in a funny way. I'm Konrad Kording, and I'm a troublemaker, and I've always been a troublemaker about rigor in science. I remember as an undergraduate in a course with a Nobel Prize laureate, and I basically went off the rails because that guy was confusing correlation with causation. And I haven't ceased being a troublemaker ever since.
Thank you, Konrad. So I am in opposition to his troublemaker. I am the organizer. So I'm Thomas. I am the director of operations for Center. What that sometimes means, partially means, is I'm managing the operations. I coordinate between the team leads and make sure they're all working together smoothly. And then I also work with Konrad to guide the project, to establish our goals and try to make sure we're meeting those goals. With that in mind, I wanted to talk about some of the things that I'm particularly proud of that Konrad alluded to a little bit, but I wanted to talk about more specifically. So in the last year, we've doubled in size. After this annual meeting, Zac and Caro started, which officially made our communications and community engagement team, and they've been doing a lot of work in this last year. We also added 2 curriculum developers, which some of you now work with, in Ani and Karen, in the last 6 months. And then we also added a new technical lead and a new web developer with Dave and Prathama, which have now helped us standardize the process of how we build our units and build our activities, which has made all of the process of building things go a lot smoother. We've also had a couple of really big highlights. I'm only picking a couple that I wanted to specifically talk about. So since we've met last time, we went to 2 conferences as exhibitors. We went to the Society for Neuroscience conference, and we also went to the Biophysical Society conference, where we got a lot of enthusiasm from students. We also wanted to not only be exhibitors at conferences, we wanted to make sure we're also presenting ourselves as academics. So we soon applied to host a workshop at the next SFN conference in October. It was accepted. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. And we're really excited to demonstrate that we are not just a organization you can sign up on a mailing list for. We also started working with a UI and graphic design team, which all of you have seen the impacts of. They have been so helpful in helping us understand how we want to engage with our students and how we want to make our materials as accessible as possible. They're coming from working with organizations like the United Nations and other major global organizations. We also became an official center at Penn, as opposed to capital center. It is just lowercase center. Effectively, we've started embedding ourselves into the culture at the University of Pennsylvania so that we are testing our materials in their classrooms. We're part of their training and figuring out how we can help this local university improve as a model for how we want to involve ourselves in universities across the country and the globe. We also have had our evaluation plan approved through the steering committee and immediately started using that by testing out Road to Rigor with students and academics and professors, and have already started taking those lessons and bringing it into that unit as well as the units with meters. And then as we've been starting to conclude our work with the graphic design team, we've started to build these new activities in the last 2 to 3 months. So what you're going to be seeing tomorrow in our SFN workshop is that work, how we've transformed the way we're thinking about activities and the way we're trying to make this an interactive process. And then upcoming, hopefully before SFN, we're going to be launching our new website with a collection of units that we are going to be showing at our SFN booth. So there's a lot of stuff imminently coming up, but I wanted to make sure we're highlighting some of the big accomplishments we've done in the last year. After that, I kind of just want to talk about what we're going to be doing over the next 3 days. So the 3 things I wanted to highlight, we're talking about center, we're talking about meters, and we're also talking about what the point of all this is, what is the next phase of this project. So Center is going to be showing a lot of stuff. We're going to be going through a demonstration of the focus group experience with Road to Rigor. We're going to be testing out our plan for the SFN workshop using the causality and randomization meter units. We're going to get updates from all of the meters, and we're going to be working with them closely. This is a rare opportunity where we all get to be in the same room. So the curriculum team and the meters are going to take some time to work together on their units, and just like collaborating together. And then finally, I want us to like try to think about like what is the next phase of this project. Okay, we're starting to actually build the units. They're going to start being shown to people. How do we get people to use them? So we're going to have a discussion this afternoon where we talk about behavioral change from 2 professors at UPenn. And then we're going to be talking to graduate students on Friday, as well as we're going to have about like 10 graduate student guests Thursday and Friday of this conference. So it'll be a really great opportunity to figure out how are we actually going to get this into the classrooms? How do we make sure these people actually want to use it? And how do we need to improve on the activities and the units that we already have and make sure it's meeting their needs? So that's just some of the things we're going to be doing over the next 3 days. I want to thank everybody for flying or driving or whatever to get here. And without further ado, I'm going to be introducing the rest of the team leads who are going to be going more deep dive into what their work looks like now. So thank you. Hao.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Hi, everyone. As previously introduced, my name is Hao. I head up the curriculum team at Center. Wanted to give you an overview of kind of how the curriculum team fits in with the overall mission, and how our process is for working with you all to help design and build, and then be involved with the testing of units. So first slide is showing kind of our thoughts on how curriculum team is fitting in with this mission, which is that our goal is to create this learning content that induces behavioral change in researchers to become more rigorous. And so I've identified kind of 3 general areas for curriculum team responsibilities. The first is to collaborate on unit creation. So meeting with all of the meters, to provide guidance on how we're able to turn rigor topics into effective instructional units, as well as keeping track of deadlines and deliverables. Next step is the design of activities with meter input. So here, working with production team to help create a learner journey for what is the experience when our learners are interacting with the web application and the website and the units. And then finally, with the assembly of unit prototypes, helping to write some of the copy and media that are going to be needed for making the units really shine in a publicly available medium, and then creating functional demo versions of these, and then to revise them based on testing feedback. Okay, so I have this big, long flow chart, which you will not be able to read the text of, but this is kind of our visualization of the different steps for the creation of a unit. This is linked in some of our documentation, which you will have access to on our shared Google Drive. Really, what I want to highlight here is where these 3 categories of responsibilities fit in this process, and then to draw your attention to all of these red stop signs. These are our checkpoints where, because this is a community-led initiative, we're checking in with everyone to make sure that, we have these communications, that we are achieving our goals. So some of these red stop signs involve things like review by the steering committee, review by Shai, review by Center Curriculum, making sure that we pass all our testing checks, that our activities are usable and are achieving our stated objectives, and final review before we get to public release over there at the end. And to alleviate any concerns that meters are responsible for all of these, any of these like steps in the green, gray, and orange squares are center-led efforts. So after kind of the initial design, Center's involved a lot more in kind of the building and testing of these things. So don't be worried that you are going to have to be responsible for everything, because we are here to help you along the way. And then I thought it would be useful to talk through an example of kind of like the specifics of how we achieve some of these responsibilities. So here I'm borrowing from Rick's unit, actually, on confirmation bias, right? So our goal for this unit is to train researchers to handle confirmation bias appropriately in their study. And one of the ways that curriculum team approaches some of these goals is to ask ourselves this question, like, what differentiates an expert, rigorous researcher from a novice, right? It's certainly possible that we can teach everyone what the definition of confirmation bias is, and to teach them that confirmation bias is something that can sink a study and its reliable results, and that both experts and novices are going to have pressure to complete a study and publish. And what we thought of in kind of this reflection process is that what we are missing in a novice is to have these kind of years of experience to draw on from practicing research and conducting studies. And a novice might not know what aspects of a study's design or execution are actually going to be critical and where confirmation bias might apply. So then when we get into the next step of designing activities with meter input, our goal here is now translating kind of the thoughts from the collaborative design into thinking about how can we make an activity that's going to help novices build expertise in that study design or execution to mitigate confirmation bias. And we know here that building expertise requires intentional practice with feedback. So some ways that we might be able to do this are to have learners practice evaluating studies for the potential impacts of confirmation bias, as well as to receive feedback on their evaluations. So we don't have this activity fully developed yet. It is in prototype stage. So I'm just sharing a screenshot of kind of like our ideas of how that is going to be executed in helping learners with this practice to develop the skill to work with helping to mitigate confirmation bias. Okay. And then as the third responsibility of assembly of the unit prototypes, we want to make a cohesive and functional prototype that includes narrative, examples, media, and these activities together. We want to make sure that our assembly of a unit has momentum in it, that learners are not just motivated to start, but to continue and to complete the unit, and to do that by using relevant and engaging examples. So real world impacts, personal stories from the meters and other experts that help captivate a learner audience, and checking for clarity and concision, right? As Shai mentioned, we want to harmonize all our units so that they all feel as though they are part of a whole. And as you can see here in this screenshot, this is an overview of kind of some of our lab meeting version prototype that we are getting started with for the confirmation bias unit. All right, thank you very much.
All right, can folks hear me okay? Sweet. As the game of the day is to introduce ourselves, I'm Zach. Hi. I'm going to be talking about user research, aka the fun part where I get to just play with things. So far in conducting user research on our materials, we've deployed 4 different methods to garner some learner feedback. We have conducted what are called usability tests, which is when I sit a student down and I say, you don't get to leave this chair until you click through all the pieces of this activity, and you have to do it under duress, and you have to tell me what you're thinking about the whole time and be nice to me while it's happening. Additionally, we've conducted focus groups, which are typically 90-minute or so sessions where we show a truncated version of a unit, typically the lab meeting version as we've been calling it, test out how the interactive pieces work, see how the narrative's landing with people, and see what people are experiencing as they're going through it. We also have a feedback widget we developed, famously called by Konrad as our toilet widget, inspired by the toilet little like, did you have a good experience in the toilet sign you see in airport bathrooms, if you're familiar with that. And also simple surveys to get people to give a little bit of feedback on basic components of the activity, rating their experience and what they recall. When we're testing something, the point of doing this is that it gives us a strong direction for how to both improve existing materials and improve future materials. I hope that feels fairly intuitive. I want to give you an example here of something that we prepared previously and did successfully show to students. So this is a section from a previous version of Road to Rigor. We had it on a web page in sort of a Jupyter Notebook style that allowed people to kind of read along as the presenter spoke, and then we did all the activities together. As we did that, we discovered that it was very hard to follow all this information while the speaker was talking. And unanimously, people were just like, please just use a slideshow. So that was an easy next step. It was just like, okay, if we want to convey this information effectively in a context where there is an instructor of some kind, let's do it in a slideshow. Then we had a large number of portions in the unit that had sort of long arguments that we were making. We were actually building the case for why rigor is something that won't get in the way of your career, but it's actually something that you can do that will benefit you in the long term. And when we tested this material, and we actually brought it to users, and we just asked them just 5 minutes after completing the activity, hey, what did we ask you to do today? No one remembered any of the myth stuff that we talked about. No one remembered these kind of long form arguments. It's not because the content was bad. It's because we were delivering it in a way that wasn't landing yet with our audience. Similar content that was making the case for why engaging with rigor is important, that utilized visuals, utilized clear anecdotes and vivid supports, a wonderful video from Gunnar Blom, actually, who's in the room, on why it's so important to care about rigor, achieved much higher recall. And in this particular section where we talked about sort of misconceptions about research rigor, where it's like, oh, pre-registration is quite a bit of work. And then we ultimately made the case that pre-registration is something that could guarantee you a publication so long as you did what you said you would do. Someone offered a really excellent point, which is, why talk about pre-registration when you could just show us how to do it? Why not just create a dummy example of how to pre-register? And this gives us really, really important directives for how to iterate upon and improve this project. It also surfaces user issues. As you can see here, this is an old example of an activity we built that utilizes the 2-4-6 hypothesis testing example, which I think is a pretty, I was told was a famous example from the literature. It was new to me, but I came to know and love it. In this example, a user is requested to input 3 integers and a hypothesis for what they think the hidden rule is. The goal is to teach them how to develop a hypothesis successfully by teaching them how to both confirm and falsify a hypothesis. As they input information, we had an interface that allowed them to track their previous tests and their previous hypotheses, and then gave them immediate feedback on, did what you input match the rule, yes or no? And you could input loads of different things. What happened here, however, is people started asking really, really good questions that we hadn't even considered as we were building and laying out this activity. Like, you have a table here that says matches the rule, and then there's 2 possible columns that could refer to, sequences or hypotheses. So what matches? People were confused on that. Similarly, we didn't have anything sort of helping users move on. So we did have a number of users who in initial testing would do like 20 tests, even though they were already repeating the correct answer after test like 5. So we had people who were just like second guessing themselves a lot because the activity wasn't helping them move on. And this one's apparent here. If you have too many guesses, our beloved rigorous Raven blocks the answer. Something that you could really only see when people start inputting tons and tons and tons of information. We don't just sort of throw these at people, however, though. We also take a little bit of time to think about what we're going to get out of this in advance. I think that it's very helpful with this kind of squishier data to do this, because sometimes when you see these findings, it's very easy to go, well, that was obvious. But when you're developing things, it's very easy to get lost in the woods and not know that actually it might not be that obvious. You might have some preconceptions that you aren't checking. So, for example, when testing the 2-4-6 activity, I asked everyone involved to just come up with some hypotheses about how they think it's going to go. And then by the end, we were able to sort of check in on those hypotheses with the usability testing that we did. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that if we take the time to formulate hypotheses in advance, you all know this, and then we conduct an experiment, this gives us actionable information. So as different pieces of information get surfaced in testing, we then do an additional analytical step where we turn that into a clear recommendation for our production team. So you can see here that we found some high priority issues. We found that the original prompt we were giving was a little bit too confusing, and users didn't immediately understand that inputting numbers is how they got new information. Similarly, we found the hypothesis input box was ultimately a little bit confusing for people because it sort of ran the risk of deluding them into thinking that we were testing true false on not just the number sequence, but also the hypothesis that they were inputting each time. And then we got to some less important and maybe like not quite so vital recommendations that we might rank as less crucial. And maybe we could even push this to the website without completing because they don't stop someone from engaging with the activity. Like maybe we need to tell people that the integers have to be between -99 and 99. Maybe the ML that we're using is getting in the way, or similar issues like that. When thinking about what comes next and what we're looking forward to, I've got lots of stuff that I'm excited about because we get to play even more. So beyond engaging with just simple usability testing, like does it work? We now get to engage special stakeholders to ask, hey, are our materials accessible? Is this working for you? Is this speaking to you in a way that makes sense given your experience? We also get to engage in not just focus groups, but also things like pilot courses. We begin laying groundwork at Penn and at other institutions. Shout out to Mary Harrington for letting us incorporate different materials into existing classes and see how it lands with students. We also have our beloved toilet widget, as well as additional data that we're gathering from the website itself, and we're continuing to utilize surveys. Thanks. I think we got Dave next.
Okay, I'm David Fischer. I'm the technical lead for the project. So my group is developing all the websites. We've come a long way in the last few months. And you can see that I do have many years. You can tell by my gray hair, I've been doing this for a while. And we're really starting to produce a lot of nice stuff. So where are we at right now? A lot of the things that some of the other leaders talked about rolls right into doing agile software development, where we are communicating very closely with the meters and the subject matter experts and things of that nature to tell me and my group, what do you need? As opposed to me telling you what you need. That's never works. So we're really focused on agile software development, strong communications, which we're constantly working on that within ourselves. We're doing activity designs using Figma. So some of those designs should, go back to everybody else in the room to get an idea of where we're going. And we are consistently evaluating how we are developing our activities. And because technology constantly changes, and we really don't have to be on the forefront, but we have to be on a standard platform that everybody, because we have a varied group of people here, that they can actually use the technology. Which brings us to the next one, with open source. Open source has a lot of different definitions. But what we're trying to develop for you all, including ourselves, is open source where you can actually take the code and do what you want with it, because we are a community. Now, at this right now, we're building it. You can take it from us. The only thing that's not necessarily really open in our stack is MongoDB. You always have to pay for the database. But these are all very standard, commonly used technologies. So it is possible for you to take an activity right off our GitHub site and do something else with it. But then that's on you, of course. But our tech stack really is JavaScript based. That's a wide term. That means all the tools we're using are built on JavaScript, like React and things like that. I won't get too technical with you, but so these are very commonly used. APIs, that's where one computer talks to another, and a markup language, so that you don't have to be Joe technical to actually change things. And that's actually called the Jam stack, if you've ever heard of it before. And we're using serverless stack, which is a newer technology with AWS, which I'm sure you've all heard of AWS. It's the big one. But what that means, serverless stack, is that keeps our costs low as a community, because we don't have a whole bunch of dedicated servers out there at AWS or any place else. When we grow and people really start using this, it just grows with us. And when they're not using it, it decreases. So this is the new way of doing things and keeping your costs low. So, and everything will be on GitHub, which is a common place to keep all your software. Okay, activity functionality. Over the last few months, we've developed activities wherein, when I started here, as you saw from the chart earlier, there really wasn't anything. We're up in double figures. And some of them will be shown to you over the next couple of days. We're still working on making them nicer and whatnot from your commentary. And so we are making very good progress there. Some of the things we can do already is different variables for an activity. We can automatically assign them to different students or participants, and some plot visualization right now. Okay, and you'll see that over the next couple days. Where are we going with this? I'm really big on agile software development. I'm a project manager by heart, but by training. So, but that's not just software development. It's what we're doing here. We're a community, and you should all have something to say about it. Not just, it used to be the computer guys said this is the way it's going to work, and you have to live with it. We don't do that anymore. It's agile. We talk to people. So we're going to include stakeholders. That's every one of you, not me. And we have a new website coming out, which will be the overall technology, where you can, sign in, go places, join the community, find places to find other information, and of course, find the units. And in the units, you have your lessons. And within your lessons, of course, you have your activities. So, but there's an overall website that we'll be bringing out in months to come. Make it easier on everybody. We do have to introduce some new technologies. We have D3 listed to improve our plotting abilities, graphing abilities. It may not be D3, that's just an example. There's some that are out there that are very well done for scientific exploration of data. Right now, we have activities that can be done as a class. The next step is to break that class into smaller groups. So that'll be coming. Of course, hands-on learning approaches, that comes from your ideas on how that works, and begin a more personalized experience. Meaning, right now, everybody that's using our activities are anonymous, because we really don't have a way of signing in. But we really don't want to keep people's data, because that can, the whole HIPAA thing, that can get, so we have to be careful with that. Some people, hey, we all want all the information we can get on the participant. Others are going to say, we don't want to know anything. And I understand that argument. Okay, last but not least, more, data optimization. There is data that's going to come out of this, right? Not necessarily on the student itself, student personal information, but the data sets we're displaying, making sure they're accurate and realistic. Maximizing the data retrieval efficiency, that's just making sure that the website itself is fast. And ongoing assessments for data accessibility, authority and authorization, if you know what the difference is. Can you actually use this, and what are you allowed to do? We have to build that into that, and that really comes from being an instructor or being a participant, things like that. You want to have different things for different types of people. Minimize personal user information retention. I know some people like to know everything about the student, but do we really want to do that? That's up for argument. But that's when you get into a different realm of HIPAA compliance and things of that nature. And we want to, but we do want to retain the relevant analytical data per the user and their behavior. So we know how many people are using this, where are they staying for a long time? Where are they just blowing by? Things like that, so that we can analyze that, take a look at it and say, okay, people actually are looking at this stuff, or they don't even look at this screen. What did we do wrong? Or should we just delete it? So that's pretty much where we're at, where we're going. We're making great strides. And I'll be here. I work with Prathima and Jack back there. Come and talk to us about anything over the next couple of days, technically speaking. I know that this is not necessarily a techie talk. I get that, but it's inevitable that tech comes in there somewhere. And, so it's almost like financials. Every company has to have them, but nobody else cares about them but financial people. So give me a yell. Again, I'm Dave Fischer. Prathima's over there. Jack's back there. And we'll be glad to speak to you about anything that you might need. And who's next? Or am I? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Are you still with me? Do I still have your attention? Great. We're running a bit late, but I'll try to be quick. So I am Carol. I am one of the community engagement and communications lead. As my little avatar shows, I'm in charge of the fun part. So I'm going to give you a bit of a overview of what has happened since we joined the team in 2023. I first want to give a shout out to the original team, because even though they didn't have a formal community and communications team, they were already doing a lot of work. So shout out to Kevin, April, all the people who were using their networks, conducted hundreds of interviews, trying to gather, intel and what this thing was going to look like. Also, Kevin was the creator of the original Raven, which it's been hard to let go, but we have evolved. There you go. So very successful also. People love it at conferences. So we went from having a small following on Twitter, still in the process. We are not super active in social media just yet, because we wanted to go out there when our new branding is available, when we have materials to promote, etc. So we're starting with Twitter. So we now have 734 followers. Then we acquired a CRM system, a customer relationship management platform, which allows us to take all the information from anybody who signs up for our mailing list at events, and really organize it, and turn it into be able to mine that information. So now we know who is who, what they do, what their interests are, whether they're faculty, whether they're graduate students, where they are. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about that. But as you can see, we went from having basically no mailing list to now having over 1,300 and growing. So that is a big accomplishment. And this is a bit of a breakdown of that mailing list. So as you can see, very much in line with our target audience breakdown, is mostly graduate students, over 40%. Then we have faculty, postdocs, and then interestingly, more and more, we realize that not only undergraduate students, but professors asking us, are you going to, put this out there for undergrads also? Apparently there's a very big need and hunger for it, because a lot of graduate professors don't want to, have to teach these all over again. So they feel like they should know this from undergrad school. So interestingly, also that, and then we have anything from industry, government, the internal C4 team, etc. But this is a really cool tool. It's also a project management tool. We're using Monday.com is the name of the platform. And that also very cool, allows us to see where those contacts are. So we can tell This is the United States, of course. Most of our contacts in the US are on the East Coast, but also West Coast, big presence also all throughout the country, pretty much. I am ashamed to say that we don't have much movement in Latin America. Being a Latin American, that is next on my list to improve that. But we can see here, for example, also through Europe, and very happily, we made contact with the African Reproducibility Network recently. They're very eager to work with us, interested, joining some of our online events. So you can see that already showing up on that map, and also through Asia and Eastern Europe. And of course, we have made contact with Australia also. So it's really cool to see this happening. A lot of this happens also because of SFN. That is a really important a platform for us to reach out to people globally. All right. That's next. We should do the next meeting there. All right. So these are just some of the organizations that we've reached out to and we've been in contact with that have shown interest in working with us to the point that Konrad were like, okay, let's stop the outreach for collaborations now until we have materials and things to actually work with, because everyone was jumping at the opportunity, whether it was to include our materials in their own, like for example, the Turing Way. They want us to do one of the books, their books on Rigor. We are talking to SPORE at Stanford. All of these organizations have shown some interest in working with us one way or another. And then we have, we've been doing events, both virtual and in person, and attending conferences. So on the left, you'll see some of the events that we've done online, some for you as meeters and some also for our community members. And then these are some pictures of SFN and BPS, the Biophysics Society here in Philly, which was a great opportunity also. Gondola, thank you so much for inviting us and giving us a heads up on this. We collected over 300 signups at this conference only, and that was very unexpected. And then we had a fantastic event at UPenn, our first event at UPenn, a live podcast recording with actually someone we met at SFN. So it's great to see the community not only growing, but really building up these relationships and making them stronger. Very well attended. Usually you expect for events, you expect that 30% of the people who are RSVP to show up, and we had over 50%. So it was a full house, beautiful venue, and really well attended. So very happy. All right. I wanted to make this like a little more, oh, hold on. To show one thing first, but I couldn't make it work. So, so focus on the left first. And it's intentionally kind of organic. It's not meant to be super organized, although Thomas helped me make it a little better. But this is just to show you what the network at UPenn currently looks like, what we've accomplished so far. So we started doing outreach to new PIs, directors of research groups, just faculty in general, etc. And some of them, responded, and each of those responses created a new nod that becomes something else, because they go, oh, you should definitely talk to this person. And so then we go to that person, and that opens up another door. Always great reception. We're very grateful, and it's been a very rewarding experience, because UPenn is showing that they really want to do this, like at all levels. Department chairs, faculty, program directors, everyone. But I want to really emphasize, and obviously she's not in the room, but the support of the biomedical graduate studies dean, Kelly Jordan Shudo, who was also inspired by Shai years ago from a talk on Rigor, because she just immediately, somebody was kind of ghosting me. And then somehow I found my way again to her, and she just opened her doors and has been putting us in contact with all the really important leaders in the School of Medicine at UPenn. So we've had meetings with this chief scientific officer who's offered us already to present in front of faculty the product and what we are and what we're doing. So I'll highlight a few more. So the chief scientific officer, the Office of the Basic Science Research, master's and certificate programs, the RCR and SSR office, which is led by Kelly Jordan Shudo herself and her team. So we are already in conversations to include some of our materials in the RCR and SRR courses, T32 proposal advisors, and Center for Excellence in Teaching. I mean, all these different offices and programs that, again, what they create is the opportunity for us to present in front of faculty who are ultimately the ones who will decide if they want to adopt these materials. So our approach is not to come and say, oh, look at this wonderful product we have, but that, of course, but also gather intel. Tell us, what would it take for you to adopt these materials, to embrace this product? So it's more of a listening tour that we're doing throughout the university. Again, great response, but that is our purpose. So what we're gonna do next is we are going, and I'm lucky that today Damon Santola and Dolores Albarracin are presenting about behavior change this afternoon, because our dissemination plan is going to be pretty much based on their theories about behavior change. So what we want to create is network architecture. So basically, we are going to design a series of networks that feed off each other and bounce the information about Community for Rigor back and forth. So you'll have, we'll start with Philadelphia in 2025 and do the same as we're doing at UPenn, but in these universities, and make sure that we then have events where we invite the 4 universities to attend, that our merch is floating around, that social media, so different touch points that reinforce the information. As you know, for any marketing purpose, you need at least 7, is what the theory says. In the meantime, we're going to continue doing exposure maximization and activating the existing networks, and then do the same throughout the country, more focused, of course, 2027 and 2028. So last word for me is encourage you to help us open those doors at your institutions. So it's as easy as putting us in contact with your biomedical graduate studies dean, and that alone will open huge doors for us. We'll do the rest. But I just want to, reiterate the importance of your collaboration in this sense. And it takes just a quick email. So thank you very much. We are now going to go on a short break. We might be running a little late, but that's okay. So back here at 10:15, and then